Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 557 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on a fundraiser night. And it's good to see you all.
And of course, Matthew has returned after a night of being off air, and of course, everyone wishing him well. The well wishes actually did something. It has put him on life support. And so
I'm still alive.
Matthew, you're about to be going in a second. I'm still alive. You're gonna be like Darth Vader or something like that. But anyways, Matthew is back, and he's going to be with us tonight while we go through the last 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And oh, buddy, is it getting good? Things are heating up a little bit, all the way from over there in Eastern Russia, which apparently Eastern Russia is just age restriction territory, so we're not even really going to be able to cover that on stream tonight. But we did put out a video on it that got age restricted today, so that was fun. But moving on from that, a whole bunch has been going on today. And of course, one thing that is going on tonight that is really more important than anything else going on is the Sunday Fundraiser. The Sunday Fundraiser is running tonight, and it is for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. Right now, the Lee Spring Army has absolutely been massacring the fundraiser and has gotten it up to $2,500 already. It is halfway to the goal, and it's only been 14 minutes. I'm going to say absolutely amazing, and of course, an amazing nonprofit to support as well. Revive Soldiers of Ukraine has been working inside of Ukraine since about 2017, helping to provide Ukrainian soldiers with the vital care and resources that help them to get their lives back. Of course, one thing that we always talk about is how well the Ukrainians have been doing on the front line. But the reason why the Ukrainians do so well is because of the selflessness of the Ukrainian soldier and the sacrifices that those individual soldiers are able to make for the whole of the Ukrainian army to succeed. Some of these soldiers end up risking...
Now explain this to me real quick, because I don't know how this is happening. We just jumped up to 2.8 thousand, and I don't see a single donation that came in between now and then.
Oh my lord! Wait, hang on. Let me go back and look. Yeah, that's weird. I'm not seeing anything, but we just got up to 2.8. I don't even know.
Crazy.
That is insane. I don't even know how we just did that. Just $400 just randomly got dropped into the fundraiser from somewhere. But anyways, moving back into the what the fundraiser is about, while the fundraiser is blowing up magically, the Revive Soldiers of Ukraine is all about helping to rehabilitate soldiers who have given practically everything except for their lives in defense of their nation and trying to push the Russians back out of Ukraine. And that's what this fundraiser is for tonight. Every single dollar that y'all put into this fundraiser goes directly to revive soldiers of Ukraine. That is a guarantee that YouTube makes and something that is insured because YouTube Give is the system that these fundraisers run through. We can't even touch the money. And I think that's a very important part of the YouTube Give process, is that it is entirely managed by YouTube. All we have a say in is saying who the fundraiser is for, which in specific terms means we get to point out the EIN number that these funds will be going to, and also the amount we want to raise in a goal. But beyond that, YouTube manages every other bit of it, guaranteeing that 100% of all of the funds raised will be going directly to the Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, meaning that every single dollar you throw into this fundraiser will go to help out in recovering a Ukrainian soldier's life back to normal. But with that, we are now going to be moving on from all of the news of this fundraiser, and we're going to be moving on into something to really quickly touch on, and then we're going to be moving from there and then back into the rest of Russia. Sadly, I won't be able to play this clip, but in the Irkutsk region, or nearly around Ulan-Ude, there was a little bit of a fracas that went on today, but the problem is that nobody has really gotten a clear story at this point as to what happened. I've heard 3 to 4 separate stories as of right now about what has been going on in this area. One, and the one that we reported on, was that these miners were, the police were attempting to conscript these miners into the Russian army, which led to a riot, which then led to violent repression by the police, which was caught on film. Several other stories revolve around these miners either being coal miners and the police came to inspect the coal mine, which then led to a riot. Another one is saying that they're illegal jade miners because the Chinese market for jade is incredibly large, and a lot of these people in this area are greatly impoverished, and so they go into the illegal jade mining trade. We don't really know what the story is at this point. All we know is that shots were fired in between some miners, and I see some people saying it's miners and not miners. They're both the same to me. I mean, I think they're both largely pronounced the same as well, if I'm correct, Matthew. I've never really heard
I believe so.
Yeah, I've never really heard a difference in between miners and miners, and I'm saying that about as differently as I could. But nevertheless, getting back into the news, the miners revolted today against the police, and it appears that shots were fired from the miners in the clip. We could actually hear a bullet or two whizzing over the cop in the film, and then the cop went back up to the miners after the situation was somewhat brought under control a little bit more, and then he proceeded to take out 2 of them at point blank range. I was not able to show that on YouTube earlier, and I can't even show y'all the clip at all right now because it turns out that even showing that clip apparently will get you age restricted on YouTube. So all I can do is describe the story to y'all, but nevertheless, we are going to be going with the story right now that largely had to do with conscription issues, because here were some problems with some of the stories that people were saying. Some people were saying that the video had actually been filmed in 2017, but you can hear a lot of references in the video to the police going to Ukraine, and the problem is that the Russian army officially was not in Ukraine in 2017, meaning that video clip was dated during this war, and most likely the later part of it past October of 2022. Another interesting thing about the clip is that it really has no context. We never see a mine. All we see is a forested road. And we also hear a lot of references to the war in Ukraine. I would say that I counted at least 3 myself, just trying to listen to the clip. But anyways, it is a very interesting occurrence, and one of the few times we've actually seen the police in Russia get into an armed fight or a clash with anyone inside of the Russian Federation. So pretty wild. But what's even wilder is that the fundraiser just hit $3,500. We are only $1,500 away right now from $5,000, which is the fundraiser goal of the night. Are we going to make it before the 30-minute mark? At this point, I don't really know. We might actually make it, and if we do, I'm going to go absolutely mental. But moving on from that little clip, which I can't show y'all, it is on the map today, so click on the link in the description below if you want to see it, but I can't even show it. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into our next bit of news at Saratov, because while the Russians are having some major issues with conscription and apparently having some major issues with some miners over there on the eastern side of the country, they are also having issues with the Ukrainian drone attacks. And these are getting incredibly severe. We're going to be getting back to the one in Saratov in a moment, but the one that really caused the most damage today, of course, was the one at Kursk, which rammed directly into the side of the FSB headquarters, causing a large fire and some pretty serious damage from what we could tell. Of course, the bottom of the clip is blurred out because the Russians believe this will be ensuring operational security of some sort, but we can see a fire raging on the FSB building over there after it was hit. Funnily enough, y'all wouldn't believe this, but the Russians actually claimed that they were able to shoot down the drone before it hit the building, and it broke up over the city of Kursk. But based off of that fire and subsequent information that we've gotten, once again, the Russians have flat out lied. The drone directly hit the building, it was never shot down, and the damage from what we are told is moderate to severe on the FSB headquarters. The Russians, of course, have been trying to find ways to stop themselves from being as susceptible to Ukrainian drone attacks as they have been. Ukrainian drone attacks have continuously been making greater and greater strides in their efforts and their destructive abilities, and the Russians are attempting to curb this as best as possible. That takes us to Ingles Air Base near Saratov, and we're actually going to be moving this marker down here because the air base is actually in this little, like, tannish area on the map. But we got some interesting pictures from there today that were taken by satellite. This is a Tu-95 on, and let me make sure I'm getting this correctly, this appears to be the 1st of this month, the 1st of September. Moving on into the rest of the day, when the satellite went back over Ingles Air Base again, we then saw this interesting sight that the entire wing of the Tu-95 has been covered in this black stuff. And when they zoom in, they're tires. They're covering the Tu-95 with spare tires that they're finding. Why?
You see, when I saw this picture at first, I thought those were mines at first. I was like, surely they didn't put mines on the wing.
I mean, I didn't think about it. What do we do to protect the plane? Well, we make sure if it gets heat, it gets evaporated, plane. Put the mines in.
Yeah, they'll fix it.
They just put like 50,000 pounds of mines on the wings. But what these actually are tires, which is really weird. And also, why? You know, like, why in the world are they putting tires on this thing? And here's the theory that we're going with right now, because we haven't gotten a statement from the Russians on this. Of course, they aren't making this public that they're doing this, but we're seeing it on satellite. The theory behind the tires is that they're supposed to stop the plane from being destroyed in a drone attack if a bomblet was to land on top of it and hit. Apparently, in the Russians' feeble minds, they think that the rubber tires are going to stop the shrapnel from puncturing the skin of the plane and setting a fuel tank on fire. That's at least what they're thinking. But the problem is that, as y'all may know, rubber tires end up catching on fire pretty easily. And also, they burn pretty hot. Let me go really quickly and pull up how hot does a rubber tire burn. Let's get the answer to that. Oh man, you're not going to be cooking in the oven with this one. This burns at around 750 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's just hot enough for the Russian fires.
I think that's actually how hot does let's see, aviation fuel burn. Aviation fuel burn 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So the tires are going to catch on fire before the jet fuel does, and then the jet fuel will of course catch on fire as well, because we saw that with the Ilyushin 76s. So of course, this isn't really smart when you look at it from a fire prevention side of things, because if the plane gets hit, no matter how many tires you put on top of this thing, it's just simply not going to survive a hit. So it's a little bit of a stupid reason to be putting tires on top of anything, but also what's really interesting is that they have a MiG-31K in this picture directly alongside the Tu-95. And what's really cool about that, well, at least information-wise, is that we know that Saratov is being used specifically to house all of the Russian aircraft in this area that are launching any kind of missiles into Ukraine. The Russians have specific airfields at this point. We know that Saratov is certainly one of them, that are being used to equip their aircraft with cruise missiles. They then take off, gain altitude, and then fire them towards Ukraine. And the fact that a MiG-31K is being spotted at this airfield along with the Tu-95s show that there is a MiG-31K unit based here, and that also gives us a little bit of information that apparently some of the Kinzhal hypersonic missiles are also inside of this airbase somewhere. The question is where, and I'm having a really hard time finding that out. Maybe you folks can help me out with that, because I'm looking around, and of course, Saratov is a pretty big airbase. It's pretty much this entire area here, but I can't really find any hardened shelters where you would usually store ammunition. Every single building appears to be some kind of a softer target, or more so of a less hardened building. So I don't know where in the hell they would be putting the Kinzels, but that's something that we can confirm. If a MiG-31 is spotted at an airfield, that means they are loading Kinzels onto that thing. The MiG-31K is specially made to fire Kinzel hypersonics, so where are the Kinzels? But that's giving the Ukrainians a pretty good idea of what they might want to attack next, because they might get lucky and end up destroying a couple of Kinzels before they can ever be fired from this airbase. Moving on out of that, the Russians are still not having a good time even when it comes to just partisan attacks alone, which are appearing to be even more successful now than they ever have been. For example, in the area of St. Petersburg, we saw that I believe it's the Druzhy oil refinery caught on fire today, and we haven't really gotten a scale of damage yet from the area, but the fire is burning pretty thick, and the Russians are starting to note that the air is getting pretty acrid around the area, meaning that's hard for them to breathe. And I gotta say, with this kind of pressure being put on them, even from the partisans, it's got to be pretty hard to breathe around St. Petersburg right now. We also got a video clip of the fire as it was burning at the oil refinery right here. Do you smell it, Vadim? That is a smell of lost profits and also cancer. That's it. It's a very interesting smell. Oh!
Oh dear.
Suka, blah!
Oh, I think the borscht is ready.
Man, oh, babushka cooked up the apple pie a little too much again, bleh. But still, very nice to see that the partisans were able to attack an oil refinery today, but we don't really know how much damage this is going to be causing. The Russians, of course, rely a lot on their oil industry. In fact, their entire economy at this point largely revolves around the oil industry inside of the Russian Federation, so we don't know how devastating of an impact this will be right now for this refinery to be closed due to the damages. Of course, this refinery isn't knocked completely out of action. It most likely will be back online within a few weeks, or a month, or maybe 2 months at the longest, but nevertheless, a refinery at this size, with this many employees and producing this much economic output, will be devastating to the Russian economy that is already pretty fragile and in a pretty weak state. The ruble is continuing to not really recover all that well. Of course, it's dropped down from being 100 rubles per dollar to around, I think, 95 rubles per dollar. You know, they're making massive gains economically up there in the Russian Federation, but it's not enough to really stop the economy from the tumble it's been taking. And I have a feeling that as time keeps going by, things like this oil refinery being attacked, are only going to worsen the already crippling situation that the Russians are dealing with economically. Moving on from that, however, and moving on into Ukraine, we got to see something today that many of y'all are going to be very happy to hear about, maybe even excited to hear about. Some of y'all have been asking for a long time, what in the world happened to the TB2 Bayraktar? And a lot of y'all have had questions about this drone. It became famous at the beginning of the war because the Ukrainians were using it to such great effect, and then they just disappeared off the face of the earth. Largely in terms of public opinion. Many people started to ask questions about what had actually happened to all of the Bayraktars, and a lot of people came to the conclusion that apparently all of them just must have been shot down and the Ukrainians didn't have any more of them. That was then somewhat disproven this year in March when a Bayraktar TB2 was shot down by friendly fire over Kyiv because it was mistaken for a Russian drone, which then showed that there were some Bayraktars out there that were still in action in the Ukrainian army. That was then further proven today as we saw the Bayraktar return in large form on camera in 2 separate videos in the area around the Dnipropetrovsk Gulf. Our first video comes from the southwestern area, close to the area of Zatoka, where we saw that a Bayraktar destroyed a Russian boat, apparently called a tuna, that was dropping off a small amount of Russian special forces on the coastline. The Bayraktar ended up hitting the boat, knocking it out, also taking out a good bit of the crew, but it does appear that a couple of Russians were able to scurry inland. Nevertheless, the Bayraktar is back on camera. We can see the Bayraktar viewing the tuna as it sits down there and unloads its crew, and the Bayraktar is about to bust this thing open like a can of tuna. Pun intended. And there we have it.
Oh. You could say that tuna is cooked.
Man, call this thing chicken of the sea, because that thing is starting to look pretty well cooked. We can see that apparently it pissed itself.
Ooh.
It got so scared. Man, that's right. Man, don't even show this video to anyone in the South because they're all going to get nightmares of the BP oil spill. But anyways, Absolutely wonderful to see, and that's actually a picture of what the tuna boat looked like before, but it certainly doesn't look like that now. The Bayraktar, as far as the public is concerned, is back in action once more. And this isn't the only clip that we got of the Bayraktar in action today either. We also saw that somewhere near the area of Oleski, a Bayraktar was attacking Russian forces here as well, completely unopposed, and it doesn't appear that it was engaged by air defenses whatsoever. And so here's the clip. Oh, computer.
Oh, Chad music, gotta have that.
Bang, 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 bang. But anyway, so you can see the Russian vehicle. It's about to attack right down there in the tree line. We can see the Bayraktar's laser targeting it, and we're about to... Oh my god! Goal! We just hit the goal!
We got 1,000 herd of corgis.
The herd of corgis just killed it.
Let's go!
Man, the herd of corgis came in here like a herd of those damn hounds in Britain, shredding up the competition and putting us over $5.3 thousand raised tonight for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. We hit the goal in 30 minutes tonight. Like Zoink Scoop, that's gotta be the fastest record. But anyways, absolutely incredible. We are killing it tonight, fundraiser-wise. And I gotta thank everyone so much for hitting that goal. In honor of the herd of corgis, throwing us over the top to $5,000, here is the Bayraktar again, knocking out this Russian vehicle. And we can see it hitting the supply truck right there, destroying it in one single hit. And that's the end of the clip. But to all the naysayers out there and all of the war analysts that said that the Bayraktar was done for, it would never be back, it was gone, all of them have been shot down, it was just too uneconomical to run, too expensive, they didn't have the weapons, Turkey didn't sell anymore to them. Well, all of those statements have been proven wrong today. The Bayraktars are still out there and they are still in action. While we don't get to see a lot of the video clips, every once in a while, we do, and it shows that the Bayraktars are still as effective as they were at the beginning of the war, and they are still keeping the namesake and the song alive, the song that put the drone down into the story of legends. Moving on from that and out of the area of Kherson, it's time for us to move on up into the area of Odessa, because while the Ukrainian Bayraktar drone has been doing a lot of work in this area, around the Dnipropetrovsk Gulf, we can also see that the Ukrainian air defenses around Odessa have been doing a lot of work to stop the Russian drones coming in. And that brings us on into these pictures. Of course, the Ukrainian air defense was able to shoot down 2 Shahed 136s around the Ismail border detachment near the area of Odessa. These 4 pictures here are all either pictures of the fragments of the Shaheds after they blew up, or the craters that they caused when they rammed into the ground and exploded. It's great to know that they were able to stop these things from running into their targets, but of course you can see that the explosive damage caused by a Shahed, even when hitting in an empty field like this, is pretty severe and pretty large. And of course, it's great to know that Ukrainian air defenses are working around the clock to save the citizens of Ukraine from an unfortunate fate due to the hands of largely Russian terrorism. And that is not all that they're doing. The Ukrainian air defense has been doing very well and has been incredibly effective so far at this point in the war. And they're constantly improving with the further implementation of more Western air defenses as the war keeps going. But the Ukrainians have some very large goals going into this fall and winter, according to Nexta on Twitter. Peter, the Twitter's here. But anyways, moving on from that.
Twitter.
Ukraine, according to the Air Force speaker Ignat, is preparing air defense forces and equipment for possible massive strikes on critical infrastructure facilities in the fall. According to Ignat, the Russian armed forces no longer have the same stockpile of missiles as before. We can all see that. But Russia is increasing production of drones, such as the Shahed 136, which is incredibly cheap and very economical to use, although they are also incredibly easy to intercept. According to Ignat, in a direct quote, he said the Ukrainians are ready. I think both the energy sector prepared for unfavorable scenarios, and the air defense, certainly. A year ago, we had no Western medium-range weapons at all. Today, we have such a variety of air defense means, which is not available anywhere else in the world. That he's not wrong on at all. Ukraine probably has just about every single air defense system one could imagine around the entire world at this point, and somehow has been able to balance all of them effectively and use them as they would have been used in most nations' doctrines. Going on into the fall and winter, the air defense is going to become crucially important once more. We saw last year the Russians attempted to break the Ukrainian will and also attempt to break the Ukrainian economy by attacking critical infrastructure such as electrical stations and electrical generators during the fall and winter months, attempting to freeze the Ukrainians into submission. Having learned this from last year, the Ukrainians are going to be attempting to create a very large and very extensive air defense grid that will be spanning from one end of the country to the other. The hope is that when Russian missiles meet this air defense grid, they will be shot down and not make it further into the country. Hopefully that's the case, so we do not see all of the infrastructure issues they were having last year during the winter and fall, because if they do, that could be a little troublesome for the Ukrainians. They weathered through it last year incredibly well, but of course, with continued attacks like that, the ability for the Ukrainian nation to persevere and survive the attacks is weakened over time. And so the air defense hopefully will be on its A game this fall and winter, and will be able to shoot down anything that's coming in. Moving on from that little bit of news and on into our location unknowns, we've also been getting some very interesting clips that we really couldn't locate to any specific part of the front line today, but were just coming from all over. Starting off on our first clip, we got to see that the Ministry of Defense from the United Kingdom is stating that the manpower shortages have been quite severe. As of late June 2023, Russia has been appealing to citizens of neighboring countries with recruitment adverts for individuals to fight in Ukraine. Online adverts have been observed in Armenia and Kazakhstan offering 495,000 rubles. That is a grand total of around 5,140 US dollars. In initial payments...
How could you resist that payment? That's wonderful.
Yeah, suka, man.
Jeez, that's like hitting the lottery.
Man, we're talking about the freaking, it's a lot of stolation, but anyways, man, I'm talking like a drunk Russian. In initial payments and salaries from 190,000 rubles, meaning that they'll get paid about $1,973 per month. There have been recruitment efforts in Kazakhstan's northern Kostanay region, appealing to the ethnic Russian population. And that's something interesting to note here, is that the Russians are trying to target Russian diasporas that are no longer inside of the Russian Federation with these recruitment efforts. We can see that up here in northern Kazakhstan. Interestingly enough, I actually got to meet a foreign exchange student while I was in high school that was from Kazakhstan, and they told me some pretty interesting stuff. While DCC Prime throws in a $500 donation, absolutely killing it. Hey! I gotta say, impressive. But moving on from that, and also thinking, by the way, DCC Prime, I absolutely overhyped that, but honestly, it's not even overhyped. That's hype that's well-deserved for that. But one thing that I was told that was incredibly interesting about this northern region of Kazakhstan is that it's segregated. And when I mean segregated, it's almost segregated like the United States before Brown v. Board of Education desegregated the public education system. In northern Kazakhstan, there is a strict divide in between the Kazakhstani people who speak the indigenous language and the people who speak the Russian language. They go to completely separate schools. They learn either Russian or the local Kazakh language, and they largely live completely separate lives. The Russians inside of Kazakhstan, for the large part, may as well be living inside of Russia. And from what I can understand, while it was a little bit of a touchy subject, and I tried to ask as many questions as I could, Russians also apparently get some kind of privileges or extra benefits that the local Kazakhstani people don't get in the northern area of Kazakhstan. So it was a very interesting thing to hear, and of course I didn't really get to talk to her all too much because, you know, as soon as I was getting to talk to her, a tornado hit our hometown, and then she ended up having to go back to Kazakhstan not long after that. So yeah, I think you remember that, Matthew. I think, you know, that was a pretty barely, but anyways. But anyways, it was a very interesting story, and we can see that the Russians are targeting that specific group in northern Kazakhstan with the hopes of pay and a better life. By the way, some of y'all are also probably wondering, how the hell did the Russians even wind up in the northern part of Kazakhstan, or really in Kazakhstan at all, because this area is so far east. It just seems bizarre that the Russians would be out here. And that's actually another interesting story as well, to kind of show y'all how the Russians operated during the Soviet Union, and to kind of show why a lot of countries like Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and many other countries that were a part of the Soviet Union have ended up resenting the Russians going into the future. This whole entire area of modern-day Kazakhstan was largely dwelled upon by the Kazakhstani people. Most people in this area were largely nomadic, or they were semi-nomadic at the time during the early part of the Soviet Union. But of course, as the Soviets came under control, or the Bolsheviks came under control, they started to largely put an end to that kind of semi-nomadic life for some of the indigenous people in the area and started to force them into the cities if they hadn't already made it there. Later on in the 1950s and 60s, Khrushchev would come into power, and due to his policy of the Virgin Lands campaign, he would encourage and entice a lot of Russians, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them, to move into these largely unfertile plains in the Kazakhstan area and attempt to try and create some sort of meaningful agricultural produce from the area. The Virgin Lands campaign ended up being a total disaster. And also, by the way, the Virgin Lands campaign, while not directly contributing to the loss of the Aral Sea, was kind of the beginning of that idea that by just completely exploiting this almost arid landscape, they could try and create something beneficial out of it. And that didn't end up proving to be successful at all, and they of course ended up destroying the Aral Sea as well, as you can see right there. Anyways, moving back to the story about the Virgin Lands campaign, a lot of those Russians that moved into this area did it because they were poor. And much like the Kazakhstani people that are being, attempting to be recruited by the Russian government right now, the Russians, the Soviets, were preying upon those Russians who had really no opportunities inside the cities they were from and were hoping that they would have a better life out here in the Virgin Lands. That never came to be. Once the agricultural campaign failed, the Soviet Union diverted their attention and focus elsewhere, and they just abandoned nearly 1 million Russians inside of Kazakhstan, and they are still there to this day. And that's how all of those Russians ended up being in the northern and western regions of Kazakhstan as of right now. So it's actually a little bit of a holdover on how badly the Russians and the Soviet Union treated their people, and how they were more than happy to just abandon most of them, around 1 million of them, in the middle of a desert. And now they go back to them and want them to join the Russian army. What a turn of events. Absolutely insane. But anyways, moving on from that, and into the next bit that the Ministry of Defense had to talk about. Since at least May of 2023, Russia has approached Central Asian migrants to fight in Ukraine with promises of fast-track citizenship and salaries of up to $4,160. Uzbek migrant builders in Mariupol have reportedly had their passports confiscated upon arrival and been coerced to join the Russian military. We've seen that happen not just with the Uzbeks, but we've seen that happen with Cubans as well, among many other different nationalities. There are at least 6 million migrants from Central Asia and Russia, which the Kremlin likely sees as potential recruits. Russia likely wishes to avoid further unpopular domestic mobilization measures in the run-up to the 2024 presidential elections. Although, who the hell cares, because the elections are already rigged. Exploiting foreign nationals allows the Kremlin to acquire additional personnel for its war effort in the face of mounting casualties without disturbing the Russian public. And we can see that they're trying their best to, once again, not call up that partial mobilization, but we can see that the Russians are teetering on the very edge as far as that's concerned. They are about to call one up. We know, we have a good idea at this point, based on what Commissar's been saying inside of Russia and what the manpower situation looks like, that the situation is so desperate, another mobilization most likely will be called up by the end of this year. We're guesstimating at this point. But moving on from that and into our next bit of location unknown news, we got to see some Ukrainians just having fun and goofing around with a little leopard 2 today. Of course, a really cute little cat, a little cute kitten, or whatever you want to call it. But I got to tell you this, I would not do what this guy's about to do on film. It's not like he was going to die or anything, but still, my better judgment says this is not smart.
Короче, настоящий танкист должен проехать по танчикам.
Oh no, they're not gonna run him over.
Oh, they are.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I would not do that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Man, why
That
would
dude's
he
wild.
do that? Yeah, no, I would never do that. I just could never imagine doing something like that. But hey, I mean, like, he did it, and he survived, so he's got a pretty cool video to show to all the folks back home, I guess. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip right there of that Leopard 2 running someone over. And we're now going to... wait a minute, Matthew. I just said running someone over. Someone's about to go, oh, that's clickbait. Oh, they didn't run him over. He's not dead. Well, they drove over him. They ran him over. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see that 4 Russians were captured.
Ну дай я пройду.
Are they gonna run them over too?
Okay, back it up.
They
wait,
want to try the challenge as well.
Dude, if the Russians heard the little backup beeping thing coming up on this BMP, they would be like that guy in that meme that goes, no, 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 wait. They would literally be doing that.
Подними голову.
Oh, there's like a seal down there, like
Подними
looking up.
Dude, he said, hey, what you doing down there? Dude, this guy literally acted like someone during a tornado drill in high school. He's like, hey, what's up, man? He's like, oh, yo, what's up, bro?
Oh, goodness.
Подними голову. Подними голову. Откуда ты?
Мурманская область, город Полярный.
Громче.
Мурманская область, город Полярный. Прикомандировка.
Ложись. Откуда ты?
Город Архангельск, Архангельской области. Мобилизованный.
Подними голову. Откуда ты?
С Архангельской области.
Откуда?
Man, why did they just literally have them lifting their head up out of the dirt, like just saying a line and then putting their head right back into the dirt?
Well, dude, don't you know this is the Russians trying to find a good damn meal? I mean, like, those MREs don't feed them, man. They're looking.
Город Нямдуми.
Разверни голову. Подними голову. Откуда ты?
Город Мурманск.
Самого города.
Область, Североморск.
That's the end of the clip, but another 4 Russians captured. Unfortunately, I couldn't really pick up what oblast they were from because that's what they were asking them. They were saying, where are you from? But nevertheless, 4 Russian prisoners captured. It doesn't really matter where they're from. It just matters that they're not going to be fighting anymore. And so with that, we're moving on from that little bit of location unknown news and on into the next one. And we got to see Baba Yaga Pro today. Like, you got Baba Yaga Light, you got Baba Yaga Classic, and then you got Baba Yaga Pro. And this is what we saw today, because apparently the Ukrainians have now updated Baba Yaga where it can carry an entire anti-tank mine with it. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Check it out. They got a freaking dinner plate for this thing.
Oh, yeah, I saw this earlier on Twitter.
Oh, my lord.
It's disarmed, though, right?
Yes, it's disarmed. It doesn't have any pressure plate in it right now. But man, oh, dude, imagine.
Man, that'd be effective.
And now we can see them rigging the anti-tank mine to actually detonate once it's sent out on its way. But Baba Yaga has gotten an upgrade. I mean, this is truly terrifying. Imagine looking up and seeing some kind of a damn, like, stone of scone looking thing coming down on you from the sky from Baba Yaga. That would be terrifying. Like, I can't even lie. That would be scary as hell. And I gotta say, the Ukrainians are always finding new and improved ways to blow away a Russian, and this has got to be the most new and improved way we've seen so far. I'm sure they're going to be upping this by next attaching a T-72 to the bottom of this thing and then just flying it over there and dropping it on someone. But, I mean, hell, this is nuts, I gotta say. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on from that little AT mine little... Oh, what the hell happened there? Did you see that?
I did not. What happened?
Everything went black on my end for like 2 seconds flat. Let me make sure everything's still running. Everything's still running. That was very weird though, Blade. But with that, we're now going to be moving on to our next one, which is, of course, the Russian casualty report. And,
oh my goodness, they got 6 Bobcats. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm telling you. That's wonderful.
I'm telling you. And we can see some memes. Hey, Mr. Cluck. Yeah, Mr. Clucky. I said Mr. Cluck. But Mr. Cluck put in a meme, and I can see that Lauren put in one. But of course, I have to say this. We love the memes, but sadly, we can't scroll through them anymore because one time we were doing it, and then it got a little questionable, and then considering that the other guy pulled up Romania, we don't want to end up pulling up Romania. So we're going to avoid Romania altogether. So sadly, we can't see the memes beyond Mr. Clucky and Lawrence, but I love to see that 6 Bobcat skid steers have been destroyed today for my boy Enforcer Matt. Not only that,
6 for me?
But I gotta tell y'all this, some Ukrainians snorted a line of crack today and looked into the future. We're gonna skip the 2 first casualty marks, and we're gonna go to the supply truck category, because today is a damn world record. 69, well, actually 59, and I was gonna say nice anyways, although that's not 69 nice, but 59 supply trucks were destroyed over the past 24 hours. That is the highest number that's ever been seen on a single day in the entirety of the war. That is unbelievable. That is 3 entire convoys that would be needed to supply a battalion tactical group from empty. So we're assuming that that battalion tactical group has had nearly every single tank break down in its unit. They're out of ammunition, they're out of food, they're out of gas, and all of it has to be driven to them. We did the estimates early on in the war, and that would require about 30 supply trucks. That means that the Russians have lost the ability to do that twice over today. It's the largest amount we've ever seen in this category. And so this is history right here, for sure. But moving on from that, the losses in every other category have also been really good today as well. It's just that the supply truck category is probably the most important one. And it's something that we've kind of stopped pointing out the importance of it as the war has kept on going, is that every other category is great to see. You know, 600 troops lost, wonderful. 12 armored personnel carriers, great. But those soldiers and those armored personnel carriers can't operate without these supply trucks getting supplies to them. Those armored personnel carriers and tanks require a constant supply of gas to be able to run, and they also require spare parts to eventually be brought up to replace the broken ones. The soldiers require ammunition, food, spare clothing, extra equipment, all kinds of things, and if these supply trucks don't make it to the front line, they just don't get them. And so these vehicles are largely knocked out of action, and these troops are knocked out of action just because these supply trucks are destroyed. So that is probably the most important losses that we see in a single given day, every single day, is the supply trucks and how many they've lost in a single day. But not only that, they've lost 600 soldiers over the past 24 hours, along with 12 armored personnel carriers, 5 tanks, 22 artillery systems, meaning that they've lost about 5 entire artillery batteries today, plus an additional 2. They also lost 11 drones, bringing that number up to a perfect 4,444 drones destroyed. We've never seen a number like that in any of the casualty reports. 3 MLRSs, which was very impressive, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. All in all, today was a very good day for the Ukrainian forces, especially in their ability to target Russian supplies and to be able to destroy them before they ever even appear on the front lines. Moving on from the casualty report, it's now time for us to get into the rest of the news today. Largely spanning from the area of the Kremena forest, we didn't get any news from the very northeastern area near Kupiansk, and then moving all the way down into the area of Robotny. We already covered the Bayraktar clips in Oleski, so if you want to see that, make sure to just go back earlier in the stream to check those out. But we will be moving in this next bit from Kremena and all the way down to Robotny, and everything that's happened in between. But as y'all may know, last night I wasn't able to run a lot of questions by y'all. I wasn't able to see what y'all's overall opinions were on some of the things that have been happening in the war today. But with the return of Enforcer Matt, we have been able to run the questions by y'all incredibly well and very efficiently tonight and get a lot of y'all's opinions on it. And so we're going to have Matthew throw up a poll and tell us what y'all have been thinking about it. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and we do have a poll to address, but before we get to that one, I want to real quick go over our fundraiser numbers. We're currently sitting at $6.2 thousand of our $5,000 goal. So we are $1,200 above goal. So a big ol' yee-haw for that. And once again, thank you all for another very successful fundraiser and smashing the goal in record time yet again. So let's go ahead and call off our top donors of the night. And up first, we have a largest one of the night, the $1,000 donation from Herd of Corgis. And thank you very much, Herd of Corgis, for being the largest one of the night thus far and carrying the fundraiser in a huge way. So thank you very much for that. We also have a $500 from Brian Teninja. We have one from DCC Prime 1. And thank you both as well for those $500 donations. Then we have a $250 from Activista. We have a $150 from Alex Yurchenko, as well as a $120 from Just Chillin' and Susan Janowski. And then we have several $100 donations. The first is from Hal Rose. Then we have one from some guy called The Enforcer. Then we have one from Malachite. We have one from Bobby Ibarra, Matherm 100, James Hughes. Then we have a 70 from Zach G. And we have a 50 from Plant Lady, Cindy Mitchell, Brian Eisman, Justice Ryan, Ben, Dead Center, Jonathan S., 2 to go, Marion Deemer, James Roberts, and Dion Yurchenko. And once again, thank you all very much for the very generous donations tonight. And as always, we can't call off every single one of them, but we see them all, and they all add up, and it makes a huge difference. Supporting a really good cause, and thank you all once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, it's been an absolutely amazing fundraiser tonight, especially with the speed at which the Lee Spring Army brought its guns to bear and blew away the fundraiser goal. We got to $5,000 in under 30 minutes. Probably one of the quickest amounts of time that we've ever reached $5,000 with. And I have to say, it is truly incredible, 100%. I got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for helping out this fundraiser tonight, because not only is it great to reach a goal with the Lee Spring Army and get it over the top, but what's more important than just our, ideas of reaching a goal and making the Lee Spring Army proud? It's more so about the actual help that that's going to be sending to Ukraine. That is going to be helping a Ukrainian soldier to walk again. That's going to be helping a Ukrainian soldier to get his functions back after sometimes surviving a shot to his head. That's going to be helping out in ways that we can't even imagine right now. And I got to thank every single one of y'all so much for having such massive hearts and massive care for all of the soldiers over there in Ukraine that have suffered because of this war in the service of the defense of Ukraine and the rest of the Western world. And I got to thank y'all so much for that, because it's truly unbelievable to know that so many of y'all have continued to care even this far into the war, and that we are still making massive differences and making a massive impact to the folks over there. And so thank you to all of y'all so much once again for helping out this fundraiser, both the folks we were able to call out, the folks we weren't able to call out, and all of the folks who may not be able to support. Some people are strapped for cash, and that's perfectly fine, but a lot of y'all hit the like button, which helps to promote this stream to other folks, and they may have the ability to promote it to even other people once they get here, or they may actually be folks who can support Ukraine and help out the fundraiser. So every single one of y'all is certainly doing their part in helping the Lee Spring Army to reach these goals and to continue to save the lives of folks in Ukraine. And so thank you so much, everyone, for helping out this fundraiser and making sure that the folks in Ukraine are taken care of again. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And it's time for us to get on into the next poll. Well, actually, the first poll.
The first poll. So let's go ahead and move into that first poll. And the question is, Ukraine Defense Minister Reznikov is sacked under very vague circumstances. And what do you believe is the real reason? 75% said probably corruption allegations. 17% said unsure, 5% said he was just outdated, and 4% said he was too close with the West. And right now, it's kind of up to speculation. We had heard previously a few months back that maybe Reznikov was involved in some kind of corruption scheme. That was allegations at the time, and then it sort of faded away. And now we see he's been sacked by Zelensky himself and pushed out of the way. Zelensky has said that they need a new, fresh view on things, and that's obviously very vague. So I would have to lean toward it's probably related to those corruption allegations, but there's also a competing theory that maybe he was getting a little too close with Western officials, which are trying to basically tell Ukraine what to do at this point, and maybe Zelensky didn't like that either. But I'm with the 75%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to probably go with the 75% as well. Everyone's got interesting points here. Either you think it's a part of Zelensky's bid to continue to try and wipe out corruption in the Ukrainian government, which it most likely is. Some people are thinking that he may have gotten a little bit too close with Western officials and largely started to try and follow their orders instead of Zelensky's, which could pose a massive problem for the chain of command and largely make Zelensky a loose link, which is very bad leadership and control-wise as far as Ukraine is concerned. He may also have been outdated as well. It may be that the concepts and ideas that he was having were more of a Soviet mindset than of a modern Western mindset, and for that reason, he was removed to actually get a fresh insight. All of them are fairly reasonable ideas or fairly reasonable assumptions to go with, but I would largely have to go with the idea that it probably was because of corruption allegations. We have been hearing about it, and it's something that we haven't really covered a lot on this channel, but of course, corruption is an issue. Ukraine's corruption is less violent than Russia's corruption. Russia's corruption ends up getting folks killed. Ukraine's corruption is more so about trying to skim a little bit out of the system and get some money out of it. Like, for example, the border guards accepting bribes to allow people to pass that aren't supposed to pass across the border. The conscription, well, more so the local commissars in Ukraine accepting bribes to not conscript certain people and then conscript others instead. Things like that do happen, and it wouldn't be that far out of the picture to say that maybe Oleksiy Reznikov was also involved in that as well, and if he was, then it's good to know that he was removed, but really we don't know the exact details yet, because Zelensky's statement has been somewhat vague. Nevertheless, the position is now open for a new person to take the reins, and hopefully we'll see that they're bringing something good to the table instead of military. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And just making sure we are still going good, because I heard some lag there for a second.
We are going good on my end, from what I understand.
Okay, good deal. I was getting worried for a second. You went totally quiet for like 5 seconds. But anyways, that was our last poll for now. So let's go ahead and move on to our first live chat question. And it's actually going to be our Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, and Tight Lines, LSO. And they said, hi, LSAers. Tonight's Morse code cipher is, Russia is so desperate for manpower, they will do anything to find some. Slava Ukraine and long live the LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And you only got that thing dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And the Russians are so desperate for manpower, they're doing just about anything and everything that they can to try and find it, even trying to recruit foreign nationals to join the Russian army. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you all for getting that Morse code message correct on the 557th day of the war. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Wanderin, who says, is it true that if St. Himars comes to Robotny, he can share his blessing with the M14?
And also, wait a minute, can you reread that one again?
They said, is it true that if St. Himars comes to Robotny, he can share his blessing with the M14?
The M14?
Is that a weapon?
I think that's well, I don't know of any M14s but the M14 rifle. And I'm sitting here thinking, are they talking about an M14 rifle? And if you are, I would say M14, not that bad. And let me go to the M14 rifle here for a minute because I got to show it to you. Here it is. Let me go make sure to get a good picture of it. So here's an M14 as it would have appeared in service with the U.S. Army and also the U.S. Marine Corps for a short while. It was one of the shorter lifespans of a rifle. The M1 Garand ended up serving longer than this thing. Really, a lot ended up serving longer than this thing, except for the Krag Jorgensen. I think that was the shortest served rifle in history. But now everyone's telling me that it's not the M14 rifle. I just had a mental lapse. It's the M14 highway down here near Melitopol. So, yes, moving on from that, from the M14 rifle and on back towards the M14 highway, which I'm sorry, it wasn't clear to me in that statement what M14 was referencing. I completely forgot the M14 highway was down there. But if the Ukrainians do take Tokmak, the HIMARS will be in range of the M14 highway and will be able to bring fire onto it and possibly hit Russian convoys that are moving along it, or take out the highway itself, where the Russians will have to slow down their convoys and their movements, which means that the supply efficiency will be greatly decreased. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well now that I understand what M14 was referencing, because I thought it was just referencing the M14 battle rifle, and I was like, that's really weird. I don't know why in the world we're talking about an M14 rifle, but we'll talk about it. But hey, M14 rifles aren't that bad. It's really just a upgraded, well, more so a modified M1 Garand that fires a 308 round and has a 20 round detachable box magazine, which is pretty cool, and someone's about to say it's not an M1 Garand. It has nothing to do with an M1 Garand. I'm going to strangle someone if they say that, because you obviously don't know how the bolt works or anything like that, because it's literally the same at that part. But anyways, with that,
hey man, it sounds like a gun snob out here. Good lord,
man, I am a gun snob, man. Dude, I'm a huge fan of the M1 Garand and the M14. I absolutely think that those rifles are amazing, especially for the time that they were made and what they did. The M14, not so much. The FAL is better than an M14, just because, but still, the M14 is not a bad rifle. It's largely just an improved version of the M1 Garand as far as it operates and functions. So I'm sure that some gun snob is about to come in here and tell me that the M14 has nothing similar to the M1 Garand, and it's just going to drive me crazy. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. We are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving right back into the frontline news.
All right, and the last one goes to Private Public 77, who says, when this war is over, what should it be named? The War of Russian Aggression, ? Or the Ukrainian War, or the Putinic Wars?
That's a good question. I would actually think that this war, going under normal naming conventions, would probably be called the Russo-Ukrainian War. That's most likely what it will fall under, kind of like the Iran-Iraq War or the Russo-Sino War, one or the other. It could fall under really any naming metric, but I think that the Russo-Ukrainian War in a serious light would probably be a pretty good name for it. But if you wanted to come up with an interesting name for it, like a little catchy name, probably Putin's Folly would probably be a pretty good name in my opinion, you know, if you just wanted to give it a little bit of a nickname, because it certainly was a failure on the Russians' end. And so with that,
Putin's big whoopsie.
Putin's oopsie daisy. Let's just call it that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, it's now time for us to get out of the question segment and back into the frontline news, starting off in the area of Crimea. A lot of the Azov guys that were once inside of the Azovstal, the Battle of Mariupol, have now returned, at least the ones who have returned, and they are now in the Crimea forest right now with the 12th National Guard Brigade of the Azov. Their faces were blurred out, but y'all largely know who they are, and you can see them right here. Look at them. They all looking all dapper in their little uniforms. This guy's got some juice. I like it. He's got some fruit juice or something.
It goes hard. Could be an album cover or something.
Man, we need that explicit content thing in the bottom corner somewhere, like, and put like a grayscale on this, because that would be pretty hardcore. But still, great to see that they have gotten back into the service, and wonderful to know that they are defending the Crimea forest area. Moving on from that and into our next little clip, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier putting a little addition to his trenches, kind of like adding a wing to your house. And we're going to be muting this music because I'm very scared of copyright. And we see him continuing to shovel, and shovel he may. And we see the Ukrainians just wandering around their little trench here in the forest and showing it off a little bit. I don't know how they do it every single time, but the floors in these trenches are so freaking level. It's like they pull out a level and they actually level the floor for these trenches, which I always just find so crazy that they do that.
This fellow right here is like acting like an extra in a movie or something. He had like a pre-planned little thing he was going to do and everything.
Man, he went, ooh, and that was it. That's what he did.
Casually zips up coat, exit stage left.
But man, I got to tell you, man, it's impressive stuff. Impressive. But with that, that's the end of that little clip, and really all we got from the Crimea area. There hasn't been any frontline movement in that direction. The Ukrainians are holding the Russians back, and we don't hear of any Ukrainian advances in this area as well, so the front line is largely staying stagnant. Moving on from that and towards the area of Bakhmut, we have heard of some Ukrainian advances in Bakhmut today. Whether that's been reflected on this map or not is going to be the question, because Deep State UA is usually a little behind the times reporting, and it appears that they are showing that the Ukrainians made an advance today, but it doesn't appear to be the one that I was told about earlier. I was told that the Ukrainians had actually made an advance into Kurtamivka and were beginning to move towards Mykolaiivka Druha, but we haven't really gotten enough confirmation on that yet. However, starting up on our northern flank and moving our way down there, we got to see the Ukrainian units firing a 120mm mortar in the northern flank, while I just glide my way through saying that. I just said 25mm mortar, and I didn't even say the words. But anyways, oh, and here's copyrighted music, and here's the clip of him hanging it around, and then dropping it right there, and poof, and there goes the round, and here comes the Ukrainian, looking back in awe of what's just happened. Love to see the U.S. flags all over Ukrainian soldiers, because while they're Ukrainian, they truly do piss red, white, and blue, which you might need to go check with a doctor on that one, because I don't think it's okay to be pissing red, white, and blue. It's good to be a patriot and all, but, you know, that's a little bit too much. Anyways, moving on from that, and moving on from that man's horrid medical conditions, I'm just playing, that isn't something that's happening to him. But anyways, moving on to the area of Klishkivka, we did get to see some Ukrainian units in this area engaged in some pretty close fighting. If the video loads, it appears that it's loaded. It appears that we're now going to be watching the video. We are now watching the video. We are now hearing the music. We're now muting the music.
That's that Mortal Kombat music, I think.
Yeah. And then we get copyrighted to oblivion. The attorneys show up at our front doors. They're like executing us on the spot. But you see the Ukrainians moving through the rubble of these village houses here. And I located this in Klishkivka, but you see the Ukrainians getting ready to advance into the open here. We can see one of the soldiers laying down some fire as this Ukrainian moves up into the crater.
Little lag.
Uh-oh. Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, man, let's see how bad it is. Oh, man. I don't know how bad it is right now. Oh, no. YouTube's saying they're having an issue. Oh, no. We're in trouble. And now
we're back.
A lot of people saying, we back, and we back, we back. And so, letting the video continue, hopefully. Someone just had to restart the stream. Are you kidding me? Do you know what restarting the stream would do? That would be crazy. But a lot of people are saying to restart the video, actually, so we can do that. So I'm going to be playing it through. Hopefully y'all heard the commentary the first time, but anyways, we can't restart streams once they start. That's something we can just never do, because if we did that, thousands of y'all would probably never get a notification that we came back on, and we would just end, and a lot of y'all wouldn't know what happened. So we can't do that because we would lose probably everyone except for like 1,000 people. So with that, the video continues. And we see them clearing the houses again. We can see them continuing to fire, and this Ukrainian soldier is about to move up to a small crater in front of him. And we can now see the Russians moving around in the debris of the village. We can see another Russian over there to the right side of the screen as well. And man, I don't know what's going on in the live chat, but apparently Baron von Richthofen, the World War I flying ace, is a big deal. In
That dude's giving me some of those Geschlechtverlangten type vibes
wait,
going
hang
on.
Is he in the live chat?
I thought you were referring to that guy as banned.
Oh, wait a minute, did you ban him?
Yeah.
Let's see. Wait, hang on, I gotta go through the live chat here. I gotta read some of these. I gotta get caught up on the sweet, juicy drama. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, man. Oh, no way. Geschlechtverlangten.
Yep.
Dude, man, the Red Baron, I mean, like, he may have not lived through the First World War, but apparently if he did, he would have just been a hardcore Nazi or something. I mean, he's a little hardcore, but anyways, moving on from that, now to the Klishkivka area and towards the direction of Touretsk, we got to see a Ukrainian Strela shooting down a Russian drone in this area. And man, the Red Baron got everyone so pissed that Sam Paladin threw in 100 just to cleanse everyone's palate of that guy's stupidity. And I gotta say, thank you for the donation to the fundraiser, because that $100 is not only going to be cleansing the palate, but also helping a soldier to get his life back. And so, here's the clip. Now, that music I would love to play. That's kind of up my alley, but, you know, it's probably copyrighted. I know someone's about to say, oh, classical music isn't copyrighted. And, you know, Matthew, I don't know why, but when I started saying that, Matthew, have you ever seen that thing where it's like that prisoner in that movie clip and he breaks the handcuffs and he says, you're not real. You're not real. You're made of moonlight.
I don't think I have.
Oh, man. Dude, I'm going to have to show that to you after the stream. Because when I started saying that little line right there, I was like, that sounded just like that guy for some reason. Anyways, the reason why we can't play classical music, I just want to give you all a moment to explain a little bit behind the scenes stuff, is that while classical music doesn't have a copyright on it, the people who actually play this music and record it, they do have a copyright on it, because they're the ones who actually made this track. You know, that wouldn't be proper due to anyone who plays classical music, because they would never be able to copyright their work. So while it is a classical song, the people who made it actually hold a copyright license to their rendition of the song.
Isn't that strange? Because you'd think that, you know, who can prove that they actually performed that rendition at that day of that recording? It's like, if it's the same song, how do you prove that?
Well, because usually, and this is something that isn't really known unless you're really into classical music, the composers will make very small adjustments to the song, where you can actually pick up on some minor tonal differences here and there throughout the song that shows that it was made by a different composer. Sometimes they stretch out a note to instead be a quarter note to a quarter note, and then an eighth note, you know, in length in some places. There are small minor changes made that allow them to ensure that it is clearly their rendition of the song. So, you know, that's kind of how. But we can also see the Strela's missile hitting the drone and destroying it right there. And we can now see them Xing out the drone down there on the bottom of the screen. But great to see. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip in the area just south of Bakhmut. And we're now going to be moving on into the middle of the Donetsk front. We didn't really get anything in large news from the Donetsk front today, but we did see some MRAPs on the move, which was really neat. And so here's the clip. And of course music's playing, but we can see the MRAPs driving by in a big convoy, moving on their way towards the front. Just really neat to see these things moving along, because usually whenever you see them driving in a convoy, it's video footage from Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan. And here we're getting to see these things in the Ukrainian army making their way to the front lines. And so with that, that's the end of that little clip. We can also see some soldiers riding in a transport truck in the back, but great to see some Ukrainian units moving back up to the lines to re-engage Russian forces. Moving on down to the southern front, this is where the action, of course, starts to pick up again. And moving on into the Volodar area, according to Noel reports on Twitter, and what they've been able to gather from a Russian blogger, according to the reports from the area, the situation near Volodar and the Yakovlivka area is deteriorating for the Russians. Increased artillery is being noted as being used on the Ukrainian side, as well as an accumulation of forces and the use of a large amount of UAVs from the Ukrainian side. This may be showing that the Ukrainians are preparing a larger push in this area, but it does appear that the Russians are already incredibly concerned even before a push begins. We haven't gotten any reports of an actual an actual battle going on in that area, except for the ongoing battle inside of Pavlivka, so we don't really have a lot more to report on that situation at the moment, rather than Russian commanders are already incredibly concerned. Moving on from that and over into the area of Velika Novosilka and the village chain, we have seen that Ukrainian forces are attempting to fight their way on through this area still. Over the past 24 hours, however, Deep State UA has not shown any updates, and we also haven't gotten a lot of frontline footage or information to let us know that they are continuing to advance. It does appear that they may be snagged on Zainaba Bajania for a small while, or they may be waiting for something to coalesce on the flanks, so that way the Ukrainian forces on the highway here, on the village chain, can then advance down past Zainaba Bajania. Nevertheless, we did get 2 clips from the general area today showing Ukrainian forces repositioning behind the lines, possibly preparing for one of those flanking actions, and we can see them driving away in their pickup truck and their pickup Humvee. Meep, meep. I love the pickup Humvees. I think they're really cool.
That's pretty cool. It's like the proper version of that Jeep-like pickup truck-looking thing.
The Jeep Gladiator?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, blid. I don't think the thing looks good, to be honest.
It does not.
No. No. But we see this
No.
Humvee backing on out, too, and then making its way on down that road. Man, I remember when Humvees were cool. Like, I remember when they were like the coolest thing in the army, and then the army got the MRAPs, and these things just kind of disappeared in public opinion. I still think they're really neat, though. But anyways, moving on from that little clip and on into the next one from the general area, we also got to see that a peon was hit by a HIMARS missile today in the area of Staromanivka. We don't know exactly where. But there's the peon right there, where the mouse cursor is. We're about to see the HIMARS missile explode on top of it, wiping the thing out. We can see the ammunition exploding on the peon and destroying it completely. With that, that's the end of that little clip right there. But wonderful to know that the Ukrainians are using the HIMARS to help boost those counter battery losses that the Russians are taking. Moving on from this area, we're now moving into where the action is really going down, which is the area of Verbove. Over the past 24 hours, I don't believe Deep State has shown much of a major advance, and they haven't, but from what we're hearing today, the Ukrainians are continuing to make some considerable advances in this area, and it appears that the Russians are not really posing that much of an ability to stop them. Moving on into the area of Verbove, we got to see that the 15th Brigade in this area was continuing to move forward and assault the area, fighting in the trenches. Alright, we're going to be muting that. We can see the Ukrainian forces advancing down this trench line here and continuing to clear it of Russians. We can see the Ukrainians have got some pretty good organization here, and we can also see that for offensive reasons, they have kitted themselves up with as much tape as possible. Call these guys a DHL package, because there's more tape on them than that. I mean, hell, I don't even know how in the world to round out that joke. It just fell flat. But we can see
I was wondering where you're going with that.
Well, you see them throwing some grenades down the trench as well, while we just try and gloss over how badly I butchered that joke. And we can see them continuing to advance. We can now see the Ukrainians advancing down the tree line. Well, actually, I believe those may be some Russians running for the hills right there. And it sure as hell is. They were all just booking it. An entire platoon, or maybe even 2 platoons worth of Russian soldiers, have just decided that their lives are more important than that frontline position, and they've decided to book it, leaving the Ukrainians behind to figure out that all of them are gone. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but great to see that the Karek Dog unit was able to inflict some good damage onto the Russians today. Speaking of which, a small company of Russian forces that were being brought up into the area to reinforce and help the Russians the side of Verbove got attacked and largely destroyed before they even made it into the town today. Sad music ensues, and a lot of destruction as well. And we can already see the convoy is getting hit by the artillery, and one of the vehicles is already going up in flames. We can also see the Ukrainians are using cluster munitions on this convoy, showing that they are introducing these things into service very quickly and starting to use them across a wide area of the front. Terry Richardson just asked, was this not VDV reinforcements? We're not entirely sure whose unit this was for. We haven't seen VDV in this area of the line near the Verbove direction. Most of those forces are along the highway from Novoprokopivka and to Tokmak itself. So based off of our current knowledge of frontline positions, this most likely wouldn't be a VDV column. This would most likely be a column attached to the 314th Brigade of the Russian Army. But you see them continuing to watch the vehicles burn. When you see another cluster of munition being used on the convoy, once again trying to inflict some pretty serious damage. And we see another vehicle getting hit pretty solidly near the rear of the convoy. And now you can see some fires burning. Chestnut roasting on an open fire. Father Frost killing your little daughter.
Damn, that was dark.
The freezing her out in the freaking cold just because he's an asshole. But anyways, you can see the artillery still slamming the convoy. Man, Father Frost makes Christmas memorable in Russia. But you know what's even more memorable? Is that Japanese people actually eat KFC for Christmas.
KFC for Christmas actually sounds kind of bussin'.
You know, it actually doesn't sound that bad. They get the $5 fill-up at the KFC. It's like a whole deal. But, like, you know, that's really weird to me. Like, did y'all know that? Did y'all know that over there in Japan, for Christmas, because of a KFC marketing guy in the 1970s or 80s, he pushed the idea to the Japanese public that Americans ate KFC for Christmas. They ate fried chicken for Christmas. So now everybody in Japan on Christmas goes to KFC and they get fried chicken. It's a thing to this day.
Man, they ought to put it in like a stuffing, like what they call a sock. What's that thing called? What the hell? How come I can't think of the name?
Stocking?
You know that thing? Yeah, the stocking. What the hell?
Good
I can't even think of that
Lord.
name to save the life of me. Put the chicken in a stocking and sell it.
Man, I don't. Why the hell did you just say that like a New Yorker, man? You said put that chicken in the stocking. That's it, but it,
I'm pissed off. I couldn't think of what the hell a stocking was, and they're calling it a sock and a. I was naming everything but a stocking.
Man, I'm telling you, that's it. That was pretty rough. They ought to put it in a stocking, dude. The stocking would be so soppy with grease by the time you got that thing out, man. That thing would sound like a wet dog if you dropped it on the floor. Just go, and you'd be like, it's gross. But anyways. Moving on from that, and also Ryder's, I said marketing genius, and yes, that man is a genius. He actually said he has a little bit of a regret about that, though. He said he kind of regrets that he just lied to the Japanese public and made them think that. But then he said, but on the other side, it's created a tradition that a lot of people enjoy. So hey, why the hell not? And you can't really disagree with that logic either, you know. And that's pretty neat to know that they just eat KFC for like a Christmas dinner over there. But anyways. Moving on from that and into the next one, we also got to see the 47th Brigade using a 120mm mortar in this area. Kind of like the other 120mm mortar being used in another part of the front line. And we can see them bringing down the fire onto the Russian positions here with their mortar. We can see a Russian moving around in that trench. Oh, okay.
Oh,
They
no.
they did a GTA flash to that one, but apparently
Wasted.
wasted. Wasted on vodka and Stolichna because
Yes,
that man is
sleepy.
he's only a little tired from the hangover. Remember, everyone, only a little tired from the hangover. That would be outrageous to know that something like a brutalizing was shown on the stream. It would never happen. But anyways, moving
Wasted
on.
on vodka. That's what that meant the whole time.
Man, he was just taking a nap, just little nappy nap time, taking a little snoozy woozy. So we're gonna be moving on from that and on to the next bit of news, where we got to see some pictures of what the Russian defenses looked like. Oh my lord, oh goodness. Anyways, here's some of the trenches that were around the area of Verbove. We can see them highlighted in red here. Of course, incredibly small trench works. They're only one defensive line deep, and they didn't really oppose that much of an ability to stop the Ukrainian forces, as y'all could tell, but of course highlighting all of the trench works and giving us a good idea of what the Ukrainians had already gone up against to get through that part of the line. Very interesting to see, and gotta say, it gives a lot of extra credit to the Ukrainians that were able to push through this area and take it. Moving on to our next clip, we also got to see an MRAP with a Miklik and a mine roller. This thing was kitted to the nines, and I'm not even kidding. This thing was kitted. Check it out. Chad music. Well, actually, what the hell was that music? It's that Army Strong music or something. I don't know, but I'm guessing it's copyrighted. We can see
the cinematography is on point. Like the color grading and everything. This is like movie quality.
Man, this is like some Top Gear stuff right here. Pretty cool, I gotta admit. Man, and that fundraiser is at $6,940. It won't be long before it hits 7K.
So close.
So close, Blade. So close.
Oh.
Boosh! And there goes a entire area of the minefield. And a lot of people were saying that was a Hans Zimmer type beat. I gotta be honest with y'all, I don't even know what a Hans Zimmer type beat really sounds like, except for that one in Dunkirk where it constantly had the damn clicking noise in the background in every single soundtrack. You see, it was make you feel like time was running out. No. To me, it sounded like one of those freaking timers you'd use back in the day to make sure you cooked your chicken properly. You know, you just hear boom, 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 and then you hear, and it's like, oh my god, it's like this is for 2 hours. Like the movie was great, but like that clicking noise really got to me. But anyways, we now see the Ukrainian armor moving up. We now see them crossing a river. Look at them go. Isn't that cool?
They really get pretty deep in the water, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And now we can see them Chad posing on top of their MTLB with a gush gun and then firing the gush gun. Man, they're making the Russians gush on the other end. Oh, man, that's funnier than it should be. But anyways, you see them continuing to fire the gush gun. And now you see them showing off a little bit of marksman shooting. And look at that. Man, they got all the nice guns, don't they? Makes me jealous. Makes me jealous. Wish I had these guns. Oh, buddy. If I had these guns, oh, they would be nice. It would be nice to have them, you know, just have a little collection of them. But look at that. They watched the brass casing fall out hardcore. And now you see them firing even larger calibers. I don't even know what caliber that is, but pretty chunky, I gotta admit. Now we can all see them standing in a field like Mario Narwhal or whatever his name was, and that's the end of the clip. And absolutely great to see the Ukrainians out there in the 58th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade doing their thing. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of that news in the Robotny area. It is now time for us to move all the way up to the city of Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 557 of the war in Ukraine. And so, without further ado, speech!
Speech!
No! No! Do it in English, Blade. Wait a minute, apparently they got rid of the auto-translator guy again, hopefully. They did! So, here's the speech.
Шановні українці, українки, по завершенню тижня хочеться сказати кілька речей. Перше, Україна стала сильніше. У нас є нові домовленості з партнерами щодо оборонних пакетів, І, до речі, сьогодні в розмові з президентом Франції Макроном ми обговорили, яке нове постачання здатне допомогти нашим воїнам. Обговорили захист нашого Одеського регіону, те, що Франція може зробити для захисту Одеси та області. І є дуже важлива домовленість про тренування у Франції наших пілотів. Наша коаліція сучасних винищувачів стає міцніше. Є вагомі речі, які ми робимо в Україні для нашого захисту щотижня все більш інтенсивно. Це стосується і нашої зброї, від гармат і снарядів до дронів і ракет. Це стосується і нашої єдності, зокрема єдності у несприйнятті усього і усіх, що послаблює Україну. Друге, ми постійно доводимо, що можемо разом робити речі, які здаються фантастичними іншому світі, але працюють в реальності, коли за них беруться українці. Вже 4 судна пройшли нашим новим альтернативним морським коридором із наших південних морських портів. І ми працюємо із нашими партнерами по всьому світу, аби відновити нормальну роботу зернового коридору, який забезпечував і має забезпечувати продовольчу безпеку в глобальному масштабі. Я дякую усім, хто з цим допомагає. Третє. За наступні місяці Україна має досягти кількох цілком конкретних результатів. Зокрема, це наша стратегічна політична мета відкриття переговорів про членство з Євросоюзом. Україна має 7 визначених рекомендацій Єврокомісії. Частину з них ми вже реалізували. Заради іншої частини потрібна результативна робота Верховної Ради України. Вчасна робота, яку ми погодили з Єврокомісією. Закон про відновлення електронного декларування, зміни до Закону про національні меншини та особливо звернув на нього увагу Закон про ПЕПів – Politically Exposed Persons – політично значущі особи. Кожен із цих законів має фундаментальне значення, і голосування щодо них матиме фундаментальне значення. Люди побачать, хто чого вартий. І я закликаю народних депутатів України не відкладати ці рішення, не підвести Україну та підтримати нашу європейську інтеграцію. Ще одне дуже важлива річ. Цього тижня парламенту буде запропоновано ухвалити і кадрове рішення. Хочу окреслити це зараз. Я вирішив провести заміну міністра оборони України. Олексій Резніков пройшов ці більш ніж 550 днів повномасштабної війни. Я вважаю, що міністерство потребує нових підходів та інших форматів взаємодії як з військовими, так і з суспільством в цілому. Зараз очолити міністерство має Рустем Умеров. Верховна Рада України добре знає цю людину, і пан Умеров не потребує додаткових представлень. Очікую від парламенту підтримки цієї кандидатури. Осінь – час для посилення. Слава Україні!
And Hurom
Herum Slava.
Man, that caught me off guard with how that ended. Like, I was expecting him
It
to
did, it
keep
was so
going.
quick.
Yeah, and then he's just like, Slava Ukraini. I was like, oh, that's like I'm muting my microphone and everything. But that is the end of the President Zelensky speech, and that is the end of the halftime show. We're now moving on into the second part of this stream. And y'all know what it's going to be about. Y'all know. It's going to be about y'all. It's going to be about everything that y'all have done tonight for this incredible fundraiser and helping to save the lives of folks over there in Ukraine, both big and small. We're also going to be talking about all of y'all's live chats and the donations that y'all have sent in that have made this fundraiser tonight possible. We're also going to be covering our polls as well, because as y'all all know, we all love the polls, and we love no other city rather than Warsaw. Warsaw is, I'm just kidding, we're not going to do that voice all too much, but with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so real quick, we have reached $7,010 on the fundraiser. So once again, a big old... And it cut out, it didn't pick it up, dang it. But anyways, that was a big old yeehaw in the background. And once again, big thanks to you all for helping us to reach to $7,110 now. And we do have several top donors to call off during the last segment. And we have a 100 from Rumpelstiltskin. We have a 100 from Chuck Elmer, as well as Sam Paladin while I choke over here. Then we have a 75 from Gene Kustra. We have a 50 from Drunky Monkey, as well as Axel K, and also Dad Good. And while I compose myself slightly over here, big thanks to you all once again, even if we weren't able to call you off, for helping us to get to $7,110. Thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I've got to thank everyone so much that has helped out with this fundraiser tonight, because y'all are incredible folks that have been helping out in amazing ways to save the lives of folks over there in Ukraine. I've got to thank everyone that we were able to call out. Call them out, because y'all have done amazing. Y'all have done incredible. And it's another week that's passed, and another week that we have all been able to help out the folks in Ukraine. And I got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again, because if it wasn't for you folks, we wouldn't be able to help save the lives of people over there in Ukraine. Y'all are the entire ability that this is possible. And so thank you to every single one of y'all so much once again, including the people that we were able to call out, the people we weren't able to call out, and the folks who may not have supported but still hit the like button and did everything they could to help promote this stream tonight, to spread the word about what the Lee Spring Army was doing. I thank each and every one of y'all so much, and I hope that next week we are able to once again pass the fundraiser goal in record time and help save the lives of even more people in Ukraine again. But with that, it is now time for us to move on to the polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and our first poll says, Ukraine has enacted a new law which mobilizes men who were previously unfit for duty. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 44% said it's fine, Ukraine is just adapting. 25% said not good, Ukraine lacks manpower. 21% said, I need more info on that. And 10% said unsure. And on this one, I will say that it was a little bit catch me off guard slightly, because I wasn't seeing that coming. And it was actually pretty abrupt, because I didn't see any signs that that would be happening. So on this one, I'm going to say that I'm going to reserve judgment for now, but it seems to suggest that maybe Ukraine is lacking manpower to some extent after having to basically change the guidelines for their recruitment and mobilization standards to try to get more recruits into their system. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm going to have to withhold judgment as well, because I don't really have a lot of information on it. I'm going to have to wait for more information to come out. I've also seen that some people have been changing the wordage a little bit on the updated rules from place to place. Some people have been making the conditions more severe than the ones that were actually listed on other lists. So I'm going to have to wait for more information on that one to actually come up with a judgment. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one says, an armed uprising occurred in a region of Russia between police and mine workers. And what are your thoughts? 39% said it's a sign of things to come. 38% said it's only a contained incident. 15% said, it seems like it could spread. And 9% said unsure. And from what I can tell, it looked like that might have been a contained incident, but it could possibly spread in the future. But for now, I don't see any evidence of that, so I'm going to go with the 38%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm honestly going to have to say I'm unsure and undecided. I'm going to have to go with the smallest amount because we've seen things like that every once in a while. We've seen the Ingush people rise up in Ingushetia, and nothing really has come out of that much. We've also seen these guys do whatever the hell they're doing for whatever reason. I don't really know if this will spread, so I'm honestly going to have to say I'm unsure and undecided. But it is nevertheless more chaos for the Russians to deal with, and that's pretty good for our end of things. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to, I believe, the live chats.
And we are. And also, real quick, big shout out to Zwan Tran for putting in a $50 donation to the fundraiser and getting us up to $7,165. So big shout out to Zwan Tran for that, and thank you very much. And moving on to our first live chat question of the last segment, it goes to Gabriel Mom, who says, is the capability gap between the F-16 and the Russian air defenses and aviation great enough that even more advanced aircraft like the F-35 would not make a noticeable difference?
An F-35 would make a noticeable difference, because while the F-16 is considerably more capable than anything the Soviet Union was able to produce or the Russian Federation, at the same time, it is still a fourth-generation non-stealth aircraft, and its cross-section is large enough that it could be picked up and shot down by Russian air defenses. So in that regard, an F-35 would be a massive improvement because most Russian air forces, really no air defenses that the Russians have, would be able to detect an F-35, and it would do amazing in seed missions for that reason, meaning that it would be destroying the ground air defense installations. So, as far as that goes, the F-16 is a massive leap above Soviet technology, but it is still not an F-35. An F-35 would actually make a massive difference. It would make a huge difference if it was to be introduced in Ukraine, even more so than an F-16 would. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question goes to AJS Matlock, who says, with the U.S. depleted uranium shells they are sending to Ukraine, done. How effective would they be if they were equipped to Ukrainian kamikaze drones? Done. And P.S. Slav Ukraine. Done.
And thank you for the support, Don. And Don, the reliability of the depleted uranium shell, Don, largely revolves around the velocity of the projectile, Don. It requires a lot of speed, Don, and that's something, Don, that you can't get, Don, when they're dropping it from a drone from a few hundred feet away, Don. So.
And when I say we want speed, I mean make my sandwich faster. Ham and cheese. Come on.
Don, hang on. Yes, I would like one margarita and a ham and cheddar, Don.
But anyways,
vodka, lay it on heavy.
Answering that like normally, so that way it's actually an understandable statement instead of just "don" every few words. Depleted uranium shells require a lot of velocity to be effective. You can't really just drop it on something and it just like melts through. It can't do that. It requires speed. Depleted uranium is used because of its density, the density of the metal. Tungsten is also something that's used a great deal in APFSDS shells because it too also has a very heavy metal density, and for that reason, it can punch through armor incredibly well, but that requires a lot of velocity, and that's also why the density of the metal and its durability is in question, because you have to have a lot of metal density for really any metals of any kind to endure the stresses, velocities, and speeds needed to puncture armor. So sadly, it wouldn't be good as a drone drop munition, but it will be wildly effective as a tank's main ammunition, at least against other tanks and armored objects. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to MGP, who says, how are Russian oil sales?
Russian oil cells as in C-E-L-L-S or sales as in S-A-L-E-S?
Sales.
Russian oil sales, from what we understand, if I'm understanding it as selling oil to other countries,
yes,
is somewhat okay. I mean, it's not like it was before the war, but they have been able to try and supplant the European market with the Chinese and Indian markets, which has been floating their economy a little bit, but not as good as it was before the war, obviously, because they're having major financial issues even right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, while Mr. Jimmy Jet puts in a $200 donation and gets the fundraiser up to $7.4 thousand. Absolute Chad and Mr. Jimmy Jeppy jetting the fundraiser on up towards the $7.5 thousand fund. Well, it's not even the $7.5 thousand fundraiser goal. It's just the $7.5 thousand mark, but absolutely incredible. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Just Me, who says, how long do you think before a drone takes out Putin's version of Air Force One at an airfield?
Probably not that long. We really need to know where that Air Force One plane is being kept. So let me go pull it up. Where
is that on Google?
Is Putin's jet? Let's see. Everything you need to know. So let's see here. Wait, I think we actually got a location here. Oh, wait a minute. No. It says for this one, it's the Vnukovo Airport. Vnukovo International Airport. So let's go to this airport. Let's see if we can find it, if it's still here. And it should be fairly visible because it just has Russia on the side of it for Russia. Is that a KC-135 Stratotanker? What the hell are these? Huh. I don't know what those are. They may be an Aleutian, but they look a lot like a Boeing 707 or a KC-135. Anyways, let's look around a little bit more. Looking for some of the larger planes. And I'm not really seeing it yet. There's the private jets. This is actually the same airport we went looking around to see if we could find the Wagner private jet. And we almost got close to finding it. What? Okay, that's certainly an Mi-8. I was about to be like, is that a CH-53? And here's some other jets and aircraft over on their own pad, but I don't know what this pad's used for, and you really can't tell a lot about the aircraft from the top down. But moving on over to the main terminal, seeing if it's around here somewhere. Not really seeing it. We see a black private jet of some kind, and we can see another blue, completely blue jet, but not really seeing the Air Force One of Putin, which is an Aleutian 96, I believe. But not seeing it here at the moment. Not to say it's not here. It could be inside of a hangar, considering that it is the president's plane. I'm sure they put in a lot of money to have the thing secured. But it's not out of the question that you could attack the Air Force One of Russia, wherever it may be, even if it's in a hangar. You could just have one drone burst through the hangar roof, blowing a hole open, and then have the second one fly right through that hole and then onto the plane. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and also went to the last known place that we saw that the jet may be. But also, by the way, let's check out this neighborhood over here, because it's called Victory, like Veterans, pretty much. Veteran Victory or something. So let's see what Veteran Victory neighborhood looks like. Huh. Road's pretty rough.
Uh-oh, what's he doing?
Dude, he's walking barefoot, man. He's looking for them ringworms, bleed. Look at, oh, wait a minute, he's got sandals on. Never mind. I was right, he getting them ringworms, bleed. But let's see here. What does this place look like? Not gonna lie, it's a little rough. It's not that bad, like, as far as Russia goes, but it's not great either. You know, it's kind of like in between is the best way to say it. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that. What the hell? What the hell?
Whoa.
What the hell? It's eating the map!
The matrix is broken.
Oh! What the hell? Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. There's a whole section of the earth missing.
Oh my
Moscow
god.
blacked out now.
Veterani Pobedi is eating the freaking globe! Okay, I'm gonna have to go and open up
it happened. Ukraine got their nukes back.
I'm gonna have to go and open up that map again. I've never seen that happen before. But here we go. Let me get this back up. Okay, there we go. We got the map back. Oh, thank the Lord. That was scaring me, man. That was scaring me a great deal. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next question goes to Anani Mouse, who says, I heard reports of Ukraine special units traveling into Russia, and soldier then used drones that were sent to Russia in pieces. And do you think it's true?
That may be true. It's not out of the question. I mean, especially for some of the Moscow attacks, because nobody really saw them fly over Russia to make the Moscow. They just kind of appeared over Moscow in some instances. So that may be the reason. It may also be the partisans who are making their own drones and then conducting the attacks on behalf of Ukraine. So, you know, with that, I hope that answers that fairly well, because it's not out of the question at all. It's a running theory. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have one from Nadrak, who says, I was under the impression that the Bayraktars are now being locally made in Ukraine and licensed by Turkey. Is it true?
I think some of them are, but at the same time, I think the Ukrainians are also buying a good deal of them from Turkey still, because that factory is probably still under construction at the moment. But of course, due to operational security reasons, we don't really know the status of the factory, whether it's open, closed, or even exists at all in reality. So perhaps they are making them inside of Ukraine, but from what we understand, all of the ones the Ukrainians are using right now are still ones from Turkey. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a question from J Devil, who says, do you think the F-16 sent will be base model or aftermarket?
Aftermarket, well, usually they don't put nitrous tanks. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to be one of those snark assholes. But anyways, they might be a little aftermarket, but you can only do so much to modify an aircraft once it's brought into service. Usually those modifications are made in the factory where they're being made in the United States, and then they're sent to foreign nations with those upgrades already built in. So usually fairly rare to see something like that happen before they make it to Ukraine. They're not the most advanced F-16s either. They're F-16Cs and F-16As. And also, from what I understand, they're earlier block variants of the F-16Cs as well. So while they are good, and they're going to be better than a MiG-29 or an Su-27, well, they'll probably be able to go toe-to-toe with an Su-27 quite easily, it still isn't the most advanced F-16 out there. The most advanced F-16s are pretty much operated by the United States alone. We don't really export those, but once we come up with a new iteration of the F-16, usually the oldest one at that point, then gets bumped down to where it can be exported, and then a whole bunch of countries come running for it with lots of cash, and they buy them from us. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kat, who says, how would you take Crimea?
How would I take Crimea? This is a great question. A great one. Yeah, it's great. So how I would take Crimea would be as follows. I would set up a bridgehead over the Kherson area, over the Antonovsky Bridge direction. Probably do something like the Russian pontoon bridge. But once you make it into the swamps and you take Oleski, instead of pushing further south, you push directly east over towards the direction of Novokakhovka. And also, you take those landing forces at Kazachi Lahori and you just push them forward into the Oleski Sands. So that way you can kind of create a little bit of a barrier that the Ukrainians down here at Oleski can kind of push into. Once you did that, and once you took the area in between Novokakhovka and Kherson, you would want to push about to the area of Velika Kopani, so that way there's enough of a barrier that most Russian artillery can't reach the river at that point. And then you would want to set up even more bridgeheads across the river, maybe 2 of them in the area of Dachi, maybe 1 of them just south of the dam at Novokakhovka, and just figure out a way to make that work. So that way you can try and push as many forces across the river as much as possible and have as operational of a supply line as well. Once you do that, then you start moving these forces from the area of Velika Kopani towards Rydny, and once they make it to Rydny, I would stop them there and wait for Ukrainian forces to make it to Tokmak over in this direction, based off of their current battle plans right now. Once they make it towards Tokmak, you bring the M14 highway under artillery bombardment from HIMARS and other long-range artillery, so that way they can slam the highway and try and slow down any supplies entering the area, or stop supplies from entering outright. Hopefully by that point the F-16 would be introduced, and most of your F-16s could be used in this general area around Tokmak, attacking Russian surface-to-air missile batteries, and also attacking Russian surface-to-air missile batteries that would be found inside the Kherson Oblast, and some of the ones in the far northern fringes of Crimea. Once you start to clear out those surface-to-air missile batteries, you don't have to clear all of them out, just most of them, then you can start conducting air-to-ground sorties with those F-16s that would greatly help in knocking out these supply lines here on the M14 highway. I don't think the F-16s in that kind of instance should be used to support the ground troops in their pushes forward. They should be used in a big picture kind of scheme, where they're used to attack supply lines and Russian logistics instead of the frontline forces, because by starving the frontline forces, you're indirectly destroying them for the most part. After you do that, Ukrainian forces could start their next phase of the offensive, moving on from the area of Rydny, right about there, and starting to move on towards Armyansk. And this is the part of the offensive I think would be the most important, is that these forces near Rydny would have to be built up and supplied over that time. That's why the break's important, so that way they can then push forward from Rydny in a lightning-fast move down the E97 highway and cut off the actual land bridge, the only one that exists, into Crimea. Once you do that, the Russians are completely confined to the Chonhar Gap and moving supplies across that area, which means that attrition rates will be incredibly high at that point, just because of the amount of supplies that the Russians are not getting in this area. Because of that, Russian forces near Tokmak and Melitopol would most likely be pushovers at that point with low resistance. They may even start to withdraw from the area, and then you can move on down into Melitopol and then on down towards the Chonhar Gap. You could, of course, attempt, before the Russians even trying to withdraw in this area, they would still have a little bit of strength in them, though, is that you could try and push from Tokmak to Melitopol and pretty much cut off all of the Russian forces from retreat in between Melitopol and Enerhodar. That would possibly trap an entire Russian army group in that area, maybe about 40 to 50,000 Russian soldiers that you could force into surrendering and just take them out of the war entirely. That's something you could try and do, but it would probably be pretty costly and it would be pretty risky to try and pull off. So I have a feeling that it would just be better to try and attack the Russian supply lines and then force the Russian army to funnel their way through the Chonhar Gap most of them won't make it through. There will be a massive bottleneck there. You can just wipe out most of them while they're trying to cross anyways, and then the remnants of the Russian army will make it into Crimea. And then from that point there, you got to push through the land bridge, and Armyansk. It's really the only way. And then you start the battle for Crimea itself. But that will largely be my overall strategic battle plan. You know, if I just had to come up with one off the top of my head as to how I would try and dissect the Russian forces and deal with them pushing on into Crimea. So I hope that answers your question fairly well. If I was a general, what would I do? It would be that. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, just want to give a shout out to Steve Watkins at work, who put in a $50 donation, as well as Alex Andrick, who put in a $40 as well, and got us up to $7,525. So doing tremendous on the fundraiser, and big thanks to you both. And moving on to our next live chat question, it goes to Happy Dragon, who says, would Ukraine be able to use the Russian prisoners of war as minesweepers, seeing as they are the ones that left them behind, or would that be against the rules of war?
That would sadly be against the rules of war. You couldn't do something like that, violate the Geneva Convention. However, it did happen in some instances after the Second World War, after the Germans unconditionally surrendered. The Danish and the Dutch would take German prisoners, and they would take them to the beaches where they would force them to dig up the minefields that existed around there. Was it legal? Yeah, actually it was, interestingly enough, because the Germans had technically surrendered. Nazi Germany had technically surrendered. So those soldiers were no longer prisoners of war. They were just foreign nationals, because the country they were fighting for in the military they were fighting for didn't even exist at that point. So legally they got away with having them clear the minefields. But in the current situation, you wouldn't be able to legally get away with that and still follow the rules of war. It would be a war crime. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. While Skip Tracer 007 throws in a 50. Real trap shit. We make it look easy.
He makes it look easy.
Walk with your boys.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
With that nasally sound, it was perfect. It was actually perfect. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, with all the mines that Russia has placed around Ukraine dropped mines onto Russian territory, let's see here, I think there was a typo in there somewhere. With all the mines that Russia has placed, has Ukraine dropped mines onto Russian territory in retaliation?
We haven't seen them launch mines en masse onto Russian territory. In fact, we haven't heard about that at all. So the answer to that would be no. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are going to be answering 3 more live chats, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Paolo, who says, excuse me, have any HIMARS been destroyed? And if not, do they orbit or otherwise change their positions to avoid detection?
We haven't really heard about any HIMARS being destroyed. It's been an incredibly long time since they've been there, so we could probably logically assume that maybe one has ended up getting unlucky, because I think there's about 100 of them there at this point. Maybe one of them got unlucky and got hit, but we haven't heard about it. So from what we understand, all of the HIMARS that have ever been delivered to Ukraine are still operational. HIMARS operate off of a normal shoot and scoot strategy that all of your artillery works off of. So they move up into a position, like, let's just say in the big scheme, they drive up into Poltava, they fire missiles at Kharkiv, and then they go driving towards Dnipro, and then they fire missiles at Kharkiv again. So, and of course that's not what they're really doing, but that's just kind of like a premise of what shoot and scoot is. You move from position to position, and then you continue to fire on the same target or different targets. So that way the enemy doesn't know where you are, because if you just drive up into Poltava, and then you just sat there for weeks, they would end up destroying you, because they would know exactly where you were after a certain amount of time. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because the HIMARS is shooting and scooting, like every other artillery piece is. Mobility in the artillery is the key to staying alive. Just like MGPL said, it's like running and gunning. You never want to stay in the same spot for too long, and that's also one thing that a lot of people don't get in the modern world, is that siege tactics just don't work on the defensive side like they used to. You really can't stay holed up in a single spot for long in most areas of modern warfare, because if you do, usually your enemy either destroys you because they know exactly where you are and they just hit you until you're gone, or they end up maneuvering around you and encircling you. And you can see that in some places, like, for example, with the Russian forces in the Balaklia counteroffensive. They just stayed in the same place for so long that their rear guard was now getting threatened by a Ukrainian encirclement, and then they ended up having to give up every single position they had for nearly 50 miles. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the, I think, second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jason Carpenter, who says, how will Russia even pay proper reparations for all the destruction that they have caused once they have lost the war?
They probably never will pay proper reparations, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing about most wars, is that the damages caused really have to be footed by the countries that may have ended up winning. And that's something kind of weird, because you would think, the Germans getting absolutely slaughtered in World War II and starting the war probably would have gotten no help whatsoever rebuilding. Everyone would just tell them, you know what, it was your problem, good luck rebuilding. But oddly enough, the U.S. would step in and give them billions, tens of billions, which in the modern world equates to, I think it's like hundreds of billions, to rebuild Germany. And that's largely what you would want. You don't want the Russians to end up footing the bill to rebuild Ukraine, because that also doesn't allow countries like the United States to build soft power inside of Ukraine. Because you see, with all of the destruction that's been caused, there is an ability for the United States and other Western countries to come in and invest. And not only do the Ukrainians reap rewards from those investments, like an improved quality of life, a better economy, and a growing one, we also receive benefits from that as well. More economic activity for us, more money, more success, a little bit of a higher standard of living because of that. And so we want to make sure that the Russians aren't footing the bill entirely. Reparations are great and all, but, it doesn't really matter if they pay for it or not, because we're largely going to be stepping in, putting a couple of bucks into the Ukrainian economy and watching that investment return about tenfold, just like it did with Poland and every other Eastern European country that we brought into the European Union and NATO. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who's the lucky last person threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Drunky Monkey, who says the reports of Russia taking out sea babies near the Kerch Bridge, do you think it's legit, and how long until the rest of the bridge falls?
Legit. Too legit to quit. I don't think it's true. I think it's probably a flat-out lie from the Russians, because if they were destroying sea babies, how come we're never seeing the videos of them destroying the sea babies? Because they're more than happy to show videos whenever they succeed, and yet we're not seeing any. So I would have to say that's probably an untrue statement from the Russians, as far as I would know. But hey, I mean, maybe they're right. It only takes one sea baby though, getting through and hitting the bridge to knock the thing out completely. So that would be my take on it. Now, answering the question on how long the bridge will last, who even really knows at this point? There's so much structural damage that's been caused to it in multiple parts throughout the war. A lot of it is in some kind of a structural decay in some form or another. So it may collapse on its own within months. It may never collapse. It may be the structural damage is pretty severe, but it's not severe enough to cause an imminent collapse. If the Ukrainians get successful and conduct another attack that does hit the bridge again, I have a feeling that it'll probably be out for even longer than it is right now. Right now, it got hit somewhere around June or July, and this bridge is going to be out, at least the road bridge, until the end of this year. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Drunky Monkey. And by the way, thank you for being here tonight and helping out the fundraiser. And with that, it is the end of tonight's stream. I got to thank every single one of y'all so much for showing up tonight and helping this fundraiser to get to where it is, because it got up to nearly $7.6 thousand raised. Y'all have helped out in massive ways in keeping this channel running. And not only keeping this channel running, but helping out these fundraisers as well to help the folks in Ukraine to keep on living another day, to eat another meal, to live in a shelter because their house has been destroyed, to help the Ukrainian soldiers that have been wounded in the line of duty to walk again and get back to their normal lives. Y'all have all helped out in massive ways to keep this entire thing running. And I got to thank every single one of y'all for doing that again tonight for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, because that Ukrainian soldier that may be able to get the rehabilitation to walk again might not know y'all's names, but he will know all of the nurses and all the folks at Revive Soldiers of Ukraine that helped him to achieve that milestone for himself. And while he may never know the name of the Lee Spring Army, he will know that there were amazingly kind and generous people somewhere out there in the world that helped that to be a possibility for him. And so thank you, everyone, so much once again for helping out this fundraiser, and thank you all for showing up tonight. If y'all did enjoy tonight's stream and you're new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe. It makes us really happy when folks do, because it lets us know that y'all enjoy this enough for us to make videos and also streams. And we do this 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night. We also upload short war summaries, which are around 10 to 15 minutes long, nearly every single day. We try and do that 7 days a week, but sometimes the news is not out in enough force in the middle of the day for us to make a video, so we usually have to sometimes wait for nighttime streams to get all of the news and then put it out in one big cycle. But nevertheless, we do run loads of videos and loads of news, and if you're looking for any news, the Enforcer channel is the place to be. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and I hope y'all all have a happy Labor Day tomorrow. Take care.
And good night, LSA. Have a happy Labor Day, and we'll see you again Tuesday night. And Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.